I, like many other people, have also been struggling with weight my entire life. I'm finally at a place where I feel like I'm dealing with it well. And I think one of the words you said, especially to her question just now, is alone. And I know as a child especially, the amount of negative comments that I would get, or what was worse, the encouragement I would get from people that I love, but because it's about weight, I was so scared to accept it. Or I would be very combative against anyone that said anything that was even remotely related to weight, that I was never willing to acknowledge that they were saying something out of love to help me and rather just protect myself. And so I think from my experience, and I think the reason I'm on a really good path today is because I finally figured out how to accept that support from the people in my network and the people that I love and care about me. So how can we try and create better language around that as we are in 2022. Everyone is accepted today, or should be. Mm-hmm. What efforts can we start making in that direction as well?
If the question is what can we change so that an individual will be able to feel comfort in getting support from those around them, I think we circle back to where we started our clinical practice guidelines. We start by communicating that struggling with weight is a real condition and not someone's fault and something for which treatment exists. I'm actually curious, you still have the microphone in your hand. What does that message sound like? Does that sound like intellectually you get it, but emotionally it's a little hard to wrap your head around the idea that, well, right, that it's not my fault and that this is a genetically conferred, brain-centered, environmentally influenced, progressive a condition that you've likely never received comprehensive treatment for? What does that messaging feel like? Is it?
I think my immediate response to that is I think every obese person's background and history is so different, the trigger words are so different, the reasons are so different, that my answer is going to be far different to anyone else, or will likely be different to most other people. And for me to hear something like that today, and where I am, I get it. But me as a 10-year-old girl that was, a lot larger, wouldn't help me. Or I don't think I would have been in the mental state or the mental capacity to understand or accept what was being said. And I think that was the hardest thing for me to overcome. And I think it was like earlier this year, that's when I had that moment of enlightenment of like, oh, I want to have the value-based life. I actually laughed at your first example on scuba diving because that is my big motivation right now. I love scuba diving and I want to keep doing it with kids in like 20, 30 years. But where I was going and the direction I was heading in, it wasn't going to happen. And seeing the people in my life, like my family, were supporting me, and I was like, you know what? My mom has constantly been saying, why don't you consider doing this, or this other diet, or, exercise more. There was a day she finally said the right thing to me, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to start approaching this. And I did. And it was that really got me onto a path that, 6-7 months later, I'm the smallest I've been in a very, very long time. And I think I'm on a path where this is continuing. Hopefully keeps going down, but I know it's a roller coaster.
Thank you very much for sharing. That's and if I could at all kind of normalize your experience, quick psychology. So I'm a GP psychotherapist. I'm going to switch into my GP psychotherapist for a moment. 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds have an intrinsic self-critic. And ultimately, if we're told at 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 that there's actually something wrong with us, it, by definition, cannot be taken constructively. What it means is, at its worst case, is if I don't change this, I actually risk the bond that I have with this person who's telling me that I really should lose. And now that I've not succeeded, I'm really actually driving a wedge between me and this person. And I'm even maybe in fear of abandonment because they really want me to and I can't. Clearly there's something wrong with me. Clearly I'm different. And that's the source of intrinsic weight bias. And that's why we start the guidelines there. That's how it goes back like a thread to 8 and 9 years old and 10 years old when the coach told me this or my parent told me this. And yes, it was loving, but in theory, there is an art to supporting someone who is at risk of struggling with obesity as a parent that is not necessarily intuitive. Telling someone they should do this and they should do that, or they should try this diet or they should try that diet, is in theory, it comes from a great place, but it doesn't work.